This is Dr. Katie from ScribeNote, and this is our next episode of What's Up Doc. Today I have Dr. Adam Little with me, and we'll get into it. Hi, Adam. How's it going?
Hey, Katie, good to see you. Doing well,
Yeah.
thanks. How about yourself? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for joining us. So first off, can you introduce yourself? Maybe tell us a bit about what you do in
Yeah,
the vet industry.
yeah. I'm a 2013 graduate of the Ontario Veterinary College, but these days focus more on people and computers than hands-on with pets. But I think one of the things that's been a pretty important element of my career is finding different ways to maximize the impact that I can have on patients. And for me, that's really been driven by an interest in technology. So coming out of veterinary school, I spent some time down in Silicon Valley, kind of being exposed to very quick, fast moving, impactful technologies, and then trying to bring some of that perspective and experience back to the veterinary space. Early days of my career, I worked for a company, LifeLearn, where we were building clinical decision support tools. Then ended up, doing some consulting, joining Texas A&M as college at the College of Veterinary Medicine as director of innovation and entrepreneurship before founding my own company that we ran for 7 years and was really focused on wellness and financing solutions for pet owners. And now do primarily consulting with companies looking at implementation of AI within their organizations and sort of looking at what's the next operating system, let's say, of veterinary practices over the next 5 to 10 years. So that's kind of my career in a nutshell. And I think along the way, I've been exposed to some pretty interesting things and people, and has left me with a really positive and excited outlook for where the profession's heading.
Awesome. Well, yeah, what a unique career path. I think there are so many options for veterinarians coming out of school, not just practice. And
Yeah,
I think it's so important to share that with our colleagues, right? Because
yeah,
practice is not for everyone, and like there are so many ways you can contribute without being in the clinic. But
yeah.
obviously, you are, I think, one of the people that I really associate with technology in the vet space. So maybe tell us a bit about like what led you to kind of choose that path and
Yeah.
how you kind of set your sights on that as you were coming into your third and fourth year at school. Like what can new students entering that time of their life, like what can they
Yeah.
do to help themselves?
Yeah. So there was a couple of um, maybe ingredients at that time that came together to greatly influence the trajectory that my career went on. So I think one of the interesting things was for me, part of it started actually with a research industry report that I was reading at the time. It was called the Bear Animal Usage Report, and I was reading it when I was on at Vets Without Borders in Tanzania. And at that time, I was considering like, do I do maybe an MBA to augment my veterinary training? But I started just kind of digging into some industry research, and it was at that time that there was a lot of information that was coming out about the impact that the internet was having on veterinary practices, how clients, the value that clients saw with services, maybe where the gaps in experience existed. And for me, it was a little bit of like, here's an opportunity for veterinary practices to meet clients where they are. And at that time, there weren't really any of these like third-party applications to help pet owners like manage their schedule or book appointments or manage prescriptions or order food or those sorts of things. It was a little bit earlier then. So I started working on an app idea that I called Pet Connect. And I would take my wireframes that I had made, these kind of screenshots of this app idea that I was working on to different industry partners and saying, hey, this is something that I want to build and you should fund it. And this is why it's going to be awesome. And I just really felt that having veterinarians helping to create that future was particularly important. And maybe it was a little bit of naivety, but I was like, I can do this. I can figure this out. And ultimately, what ended up happening was by creating a lot of surface area for different people to understand my ideas and perspectives, it just led to opportunities that I couldn't have possibly planned on. So, like, literally, like taking and having those meetings, I was introduced to a board member of LifeLearn who then connected me to their leadership team, who basically said, look, these are cool ideas, but we have a similar, set of ideas and vision. What if you worked with us to build and execute that out? And so I think a couple takeaways from that experience for me were, had I not put myself out there and actually just tried to create something, in this case, like literally screenshots, I never would have found those opportunities. And the second part being that it wasn't this kind of linear path where I knew where I wanted to get to. It was just more saying yes to every opportunity that was in front of me. And that began to compound over time. And so I think for a lot of people, that's quite a different outlook on their career than a traditional veterinary journey because most people decide to be a veterinarian before the age of 10. It's not just that they've decided to be a veterinarian, but they have a very clear idea in their mind of what that looks like. What is the type of job that I want? Maybe what's the clinic? Maybe what's the specific specialty that I'm looking for? And so I think that in many ways, a veterinary training and education program isn't necessarily set up to expose you to all those different fields because in many people's minds, they've already closed off so many doors about where the profession can take them. So that's one piece that I think is really important is, being open to not just a diversity of pathways, but jobs and ideas that you might not even know that exist. For example, lots of veterinarians today work in telemedicine. Like that wasn't even a job or a task that you could do back when I was in veterinary school. And so it's really difficult to predict with a high degree of certainty, like what exactly those career opportunities are going to look like, but more, can you sort of be in the arena? Can you be in a place that when those opportunities arise, either ones that you were exposed to, you created that are created around you, you can really lean into. So I think that's really important. The other piece of advice that really served me well is I tried to be in rooms where being a veterinarian is what made me different than everybody else in the room. So when you're in vet school, the thing that unites you and all your classmates and literally everybody in the building is that they're all veterinarians. And it creates this kind of weird, almost mindset where you sort of look at through the lens of like, oh, everybody's a vet and that's what makes us the same. And maybe that's not a lot of differentiation there, but in most of the world, in most rooms that you're in, that's what makes you unique. And for me, that was opportunities to get into some of the human health conversations where I was looking at opportunities to bring that technology or bring those approaches back to the veterinary profession. But I oftentimes got the most out of being in rooms where the thing that made me unique or different from everybody else around me was that veterinary background, which was a little bit of a twist versus where I found myself in the early stages of my learning.
Wow, that's pretty amazing, and I can tell you're super passionate. Like even just listening to you talk about your first, your first project, and yeah, I mean, I've obviously seen firsthand kind of how much work it is to like get into a
Yeah,
startup and like to run a startup. So obviously,
yeah,
I don't do as much of that as the other people at ScribeNote, but yeah, it's wild, and I really appreciate you sharing your journey with us there. um I think it'll be really helpful for people just to kind of have their eyes open to different things. And it sounds like you did a lot of networking, like a lot of boots on the
yeah,
ground, kind of work in the room and just getting your ideas out there. So yeah, really, really impressive, Adam. So I guess a couple things that I was thinking about, like you were telling me your story, is technology, has really,
yeah,
really changed since the time even, you and I graduated from
yeah,
school back in, you were 2013, I was 2016. Like, I know it's so hard to predict. You're right about like,
yeah,
what's going to happen in the next 5 to 10 years. But maybe share some insight as to what you think, like,
yeah,
how that's going to drive things forward. I think it's pretty impressive already to see the shift. But yeah.
yeah. Well, I think maybe the rise of these dictation apps are a really good, maybe early peek at how technology might look different in the future. So taking a step back, I think like most healthcare professionals, and professions, the relationship with technology has been a little bit strained at times where these tools that were supposed to make our lives better and easier ended up just kind of replacing the work. And now we're just doing different things, but we're not necessarily seeing those benefits. And historically, a lot of the technology, at least some of the software tools, have always been, hey, here's a way to benefit your clients. Here's a way to like improve their experience. But it wasn't always looked at the perspective of actually the end users of these technologies in many cases are like veterinarians or front desk staff members or technicians or nurses or what have you. And there hasn't always been a lot of maybe empathy and thought that goes into like, how do we make their lives better? And so the interesting thing about the dictation solutions have been that for the first time, individual veterinarians have been able to adopt technology basically themselves. They've been able to look at a website and say, hey, this even sounds cool. Like, I'm going to use that thing today. It's been able to create immediate value for them, not like some future we might improve compliance or time savings down the road. It's like yesterday, I had 2 hours to do my notes. Now it's 15 minutes or what have you. And the third part is it didn't require the permission of other people in order to get going. It didn't necessarily need to in the first versions integrate with all these tools or create this kind of decision by committee approach to software. And so I think that ends up creating a bit of an interesting blueprint for the veterinary profession moving forward, where if we can develop technology that is hyper personalized, not just to the practice, but to the person, reach them and work with them where they are at, whether that is like literally in the exam room or other parts of that workflow, and have it be something that is less of, I'm going to go back to this box this computer between appointments, learn the software, click on menus, get help, but more the support is immediate, it's personalized, it's kind of ambient in the background, it's AI led. I think you're going to start to get some pretty significant gains from technology, not because veterinarians are fundamentally changing how they work, but rather the tools are meeting them at the places that they need help, as opposed to creating these sort of separate worlds where you do the veterinary job and then you do the computer aspects of the veterinary job. And I think so. I think that's really exciting. Two things that I'm really excited about as kind of ingredients here for this future. One are the rise of AI agents, and two is maybe how we build this future. So on the former, I think historically software has been quite rigid and required veterinarians to adapt their workflow to the way that the technology works. And you see this all the time. You're like, I don't want it to do that thing. I need this piece of information there. Why am I still having to click all these buttons? Why isn't it working like me? And I think what's really interesting is that AI agents have the ability to basically extend, mimic your workflows in a way that feels natural to how you do that task today. So as an example, if you're a practice that when you record a medical note, this is how or you have an exam, this is how you fill out your prescriptions, or this is how you handle your rebooking, or this is how you handle referral management. Well, now not only can an AI agent actually go and perform those steps, but it can watch how you do those steps and then literally create that workflow personalized to you. And so I think what ends up happening is veterinary practices will start to work with dozens of these kind of digital workers that augment the parts of the clinic and patient experience that today are filled with, a lot of either broken workflows or manual work. And I hope in the best version of this implementation, it will free up the human labor, the human staff members at these clinics to focus on the highest value activities. So that's kind of one piece. The second part is, and there's lots of examples of that we can get into. The second part is how we build this. Historically, if you wanted to build technology, you had to be like a coder, you had to be a software developer, and something like 0.5% of the world knows how to code. So it's a very, very small group of people. And it means that if you're a veterinarian and you had an idea, like I did when I was in vet school, I couldn't take it very far without money or other people around me. But now, with a lot of these AI coding platforms, you have the ability to go from I have an idea to here is a product. Here's literally a piece of technology that I have created for myself in literally a matter of minutes. Because now you can talk to technology, you can talk to computers like you would talk to a human and give them instructions to say, hey, build this application, build this workflow, build these tools and connect them together in a way that feels much more natural. And so you're going to open up the ability for everybody in every domain to actually start to create the technology that they want to work with. And I think that's going to empower a lot of people to shift from like a user of these tools to more creators of it, in the same way that like Instagram allowed us all to be photographers, YouTube democratized video creation. You're starting to see how the technology is going to enable a wave of creation that historically has been limited to either very expensive folks that have high skills that are limited in nature to a select number of people. And so that's really exciting as well, because I think it's going to open up a lot of innovation from people who historically were just blocked because they didn't have that skill set.
Yeah, so true. I think there definitely is a lot of excitement around technology in the future of VetMed, and you're right. Like I agree, it's 100% been like pretty stagnant. You haven't really seen much change. You see
Yeah.
these like really like old school, clunky, click happy systems that
Yeah.
are really not built for improving workflows. They're more so,
Yeah.
like you said, just like keeping track of them, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and so yeah, I'm super excited for the future as well, and some really great points you brought up there. And I think we've got some big brains on it in multiple areas of the field right now. So we'll see what
Yeah.
happens in the next little bit. Yeah, so I think obviously we've covered a lot of really great stuff today. Anything else that you can share that might be like your favorite project, or
Yeah.
anything that you can think of that people might be interested in hearing about, that's just because it's so far removed from what they do on the clinic floor? I would love
Yeah.
to hear.
Yeah. So I think that there's maybe a couple things that have been really important, moments or milestones in my career that when I reflect back, like maybe I didn't fully appreciate at the time how significant they were going to be. So, for example, when we were at Texas A&M, we launched something called the Veterinary Entrepreneurship Academy, the VEA. And what we did is we paired veterinary students with early stage animal health companies, because the idea being that there's a lot of these cool companies that could really use a veterinary perspective, and students should be exposed to what's going on out there, but the connections were a little bit weak. And I think just by putting people in those environments, it really expanded their horizons of what the opportunities were. And there's people that were graduates of that program that have gone on to have leadership roles at really big animal health companies. They founded their own companies and sold their own companies. And it was more just creating the catalyst for them to then run their own race. And so I think that for a lot of people, when they look at these new opportunities, there's a level of maybe control or clarity or predictability that they're looking for. Hey, if I take this leap of faith, what does it mean about these other things? And I think the way that I look at it is, again, how can you just take a step, expose yourself to something new, take an opportunity, work for one of these companies, act as an early adopter, participate in an advisory board, find a way to just take the first step outside of something that you're currently comfortable in to give you an opportunity to explore things. And I think as a student, those opportunities are all over the place. One of the things that was the biggest advantage for me was that everybody that I reached out to, almost everybody that I reached out to when I was in a veterinary school trying to explore these topics, they said yes to a phone call, to a coffee, to a conversation, because so much of the veterinary profession is about the there's this sense of kind of community within the profession, and a lot of people, myself included, actively want to find ways to give back and actively want to encourage that and foster that curiosity in the next generation, because we were beneficiaries of the previous generations, right? And for me, that is something that I think is incredibly important. And so you get a lot of yeses as a student, where as you enter your professional world, like those yeses sometimes turns to maybes or no's or we're busies, but people are really actively looking for ways to help you explore what you're passionate about. And there's no better time to do that than when you are in school. And I think this is where, for all the structure and rigidity and intensity, and amount of information that goes into the veterinary curriculum, people need to find ways in order for their veterinary education to act as a springboard to explore their passions. Whether that's like attending wet labs, going to a different conference, taking the summer to do a job that you might not like, that's what it's there for. Don't overlook those opportunities, because that level of kind of flexibility and exploration becomes increasingly difficult to achieve as you get later in life. And so for me, it was really important to seize those moments, but I still think now that I underestimated how valuable that time was. So that would be kind of maybe one perspective for people that are like, do I take that risk? Do I do that thing? What if it's like, yes, 100% yes, over and over again, because you might not have that opportunity again. And certainly as you never know where that one yes will lead to.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there. Like, really stepping outside your comfort zone and being open to opportunities is so important, because you just have no idea where it could take you, where, like, how it
Yeah.
could change, your future and the future of your colleagues. So, some amazing, perspectives there, Adam. I really appreciate you joining us today. And, I guess maybe the thing I'll ask you to close off is anywhere that people could, look at, like with regards to, you said the VEA, like
Yeah.
places like that, like some local, maybe to Canada, the
Yeah.
States, any that
Yeah.
you know that we could
Yeah.
maybe call out?
Yeah, sure. So we created the Veterinary Innovation Summit a few years ago. Now I think it's in year 8, which was like an event dedicated to bring together both veterinary professionals, but also the broader community on the pet and human health side to talk about technology and expose people to these ideas. So that conference runs annually and is one that I would recommend. There are several others now that have come up as well. The Animal Health Forum, the Pet Forum, etc. Those events are quite interesting. Often you can get like discounts as students as well, and so you can or find different ways to kind of get in if you are particularly motivated. So I think those would be some really interesting pieces there. The other thing I would say is, like, even trying something like if you're interested, like taking those shifts in those telemedicine companies, or something that's going to expose you to a new way of working that allows you to kind of just dip your toes in, because it's a new way of interacting with clients, it's a new way of delivering medicine, it's a new way of like managing your career and your time. And I think that is a really helpful way to maybe regain some agency, because a lot of people end up going to jobs that they don't have a lot of maybe control over their day, and then they figure out like, hey, this isn't exactly what I want to do. And so if there's ways that you can expose yourself to some of those opportunities, it doesn't mean that it's like a lifelong commitment. It's more, hey, can I find somebody or do something there that's a little bit unique? And then the last thing I would say is like, write, like write down, even if it's just for yourself, like, what is it that you want to achieve? What is interesting to you? Ideally, opinions on things, perspectives on things, because you never know who might read that and how it might create an opportunity for you. And I got to do better at this myself. But like when I was writing a little bit more, it led to a cascading set of opportunities. And then again, you speak at one conference, somebody in the audience is connected to another group, so they invite you to speak there, and all of a sudden it snowballs. And so I think that if you give people exposure to how you think and what you're thinking about and why it's important and have opinions on those things, you really do stand out. So those are kind of be the three things. Like find yourself in rooms of these conferences, in which there's a lots now. Try these new work opportunities that are pretty low stakes to get started, but force you to do something different. And the third is maybe crystallize a little bit more your vision for the future and what you're interested in, and force yourself to write about it.
Amazing. Yeah, I love all of that. Thanks again so much for sharing your tips and your perspective, because I really think it's quite unique, and you should be really proud of yourself for kind of putting yourself out there like way back when, and still, right? Because it takes a lot, I think, to try and step off the beaten path and do something different with a career that, you're right, is so like blinders. Like this is, what it looks like. That's all a, like a practitioner can do. And so, I think that's really something remarkable. So thanks for joining us. And thanks everybody else as well for tuning in. And we'll see you next time on Let's Up Talk.